If you're wondering what we're going to be talking about this morning, so am I. Brother Don called me yesterday afternoon and asked me to teach this morning. So immediately I always think, what we're going to talk about. And you can come up with all kinds of ideas, but the main thing is what the God wants to talk about.
Amen.
So that's what we're going to do this morning, because I had no idea what we're going to talk about. And it's not because I didn't prepare it, or wasn't concerned, didn't care. I mean, I got the notes yesterday afternoon, but you could ask me when I walked through the door this morning. That would have been fine. Because it's not what I prepare or what I think of, it's what the Lord has. So I did think about some things, I had some ideas, and actually made a few notes. That's my notes from studying yesterday. But sometimes the Lord says, just don't worry about it. We may be facing some situation, and it could be a little one, a medium size, or it could be super size. And we always, first thing to do is, what can I do to fix this situation, work it out, make it go away, resolve it, whatever we start thinking. Our mind can start going 90 to nothing, just like that, from 0 to 100 in an instant. Because we're thinking, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What do I need to do? And there are, of course, obviously always times where we do need to get a plan of action and follow a plan of action as the Lord leads us. Sometimes the best thing we can do is, if it's right here, we just back off and leave it alone. Don't worry about it. That doesn't mean we don't care, we're not concerned, but we're not going to worry about it. Because worry never, Jesus said worry's not going to add a foot to your height. It's not going to add anything to you. All worry is going to do is just going to destroy and take away. It's going to keep you occupied. It's a distraction from the enemy. Because whatever's going on and that we need to be thinking about and trying to hear from God about how we need to deal with the situation. Worry is just there as a distraction to incite fear, doubt, unbelief, stress. So worry is a killer. I mean, even the world understands that worry is a killer. And it paralyzes your mind. It can also affect your body. There are many, many, many stress-related illnesses that happen in our body because of what's going on in our mind. So if the enemy he doesn't have to do anything to our body, he doesn't have to do anything out in our life or anything going on with us. If he can just get in here, if he can just get inside here, he can control us. He can mess us up. And that's going to affect, once he gets in here, it affects everything. It affects your body. Your body can be affected with some kind of illness or physical condition, and your mind can still be clear. Once your mind gets messed up, it affects everything. Your whole life, your whole body, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, in every way. So there's a well-known book called The Battlefield of the Mind. And other books written about what we think. Because what we think is going to determine what we do. It's going to determine how we feel. It's going to determine everything. So we've got to get control up here first. Once we get our thinking straight and lined up with the Word of God, then God can work in our lives. God can work anyway, just by our best efforts to get in His way. You have doubt and unbelief. God, because He is a sovereign God, because He has grace, He has mercy, He has love for us and compassion for us. And the Word says that whatever we felt, Jesus felt. He's been through it. So He knows how to deal with it and to overcome it and to get through it. So our best option, our best bet is just to grab hold of Him and hang on and let Him guide us through. You know, one little lady needed to be healed, been sick for over 12 years, spent all her money, had everything left, or had nothing left. But she said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. And she did whatever it took to get through all those men where she shouldn't have been anyway. She should have been out there in public with all the men around. And then not only there, but get out of my way. Pushing and shoving and crawling and whatever she had to do. Because in her mind was, if I can just get to Jesus. If I can just get to him. If I can just touch the hem of his garment. Not his garment, but just the hem. Just touch part of it. And she did what she had to do. But she was focused. Her thoughts were focused and centered on Jesus. Because she knew that's where the power was. Because what did Jesus say? You know, somebody touched me. And the disciples were standing there and they said, well, yeah, somebody touched you. What are you thinking? Look at all these people around. They're all pushing and shoving. Somebody touched you, okay? So did, somebody touched you 4 steps back, 5 steps back, 6 steps back. Well, all of a sudden, are you noticing or saying anything about somebody touching you? And we've touched you. We're walking along. We're bumping into you too. So why all of a sudden is he going to stop and say, somebody touched me? What's different about that touch? See, that's the thing. It wasn't just that somebody touched him. There was something different about the touch. Yeah. They touched him in a different way than all the other touches. And when it's like as we live our life, people touch us. Whether it brings up good emotions or bad emotions. And I'm not talking physical, of course. That happens. But people touch us emotionally. And we take note of that. So this time, when somebody touched Jesus, it was different. It was a different kind of touch. It's like when someone does something really kind for us, blesses us in some way. That's a different kind of touch. There's something different about that. So when this little lady touched Jesus, it was something different. I mean, it literally stopped God in his tracks.
Right. Cool.
Here's God in the flesh. He's walking along, doing what he's doing. And somebody touched him, and he stopped. He said, somebody touched me. And he stopped him. And he took notice of that. That little lady stopped God in his tracks.
Yeah.
He stopped right there. Everything else, whatever mission he was on at that moment, remember all these people that were around him, one little insignificant, some little nobody that shouldn't have been there in the first place, or we looked down on, stopped God in his tracks. He stopped what he was doing and he took note of this person that touched him.
That's how important we are to him.
But didn't she just touch his garment?
Said he
She
touched
didn't
him.
actually touch him. She touched his garment,
Yeah.
and he even felt it from that.
Yeah, it's like, the Bible says we can be clothed in righteousness. So that garment was kind of symbolic of his glory. It's like when the prodigal son returned, father gave him a ring, killed the fatted calf, and he put a robe on him. Yeah. His robe he put on him. So to signify his glory, the Father's glory, and everything that the Father was. He gave him the best. And it would have been a fine robe. It would have been embroidered in beautiful colors, the best material, the best workmanship. And he took that and he wrapped it around the prodigal son. Not just someone who would have been insignificant, unimportant in the world's eyes, but this was someone that had rebelled against the Father, had rebelled against him. Not just was in rebellion, but had rebelled against him, took what the Father had given him, because the Father split the inheritance, gave some to the older son, some to him. He demanded that from his Father. The Father, okay, gave in, he gave it to him, and he took that and went and he said it squandered it. He wasted it. Spent every bit of it. Wine, women, and song. Gambling, whatever the world had to offer. So the Father saw that. He knew what he was going to do ahead of time. But the Son was persistent. So he finally said, okay, here it is. And the Son took it and went and totally wasted it out in the worldly fleshly pursuits. But when the Son came to his senses and he came back, the Father not only let him come back, he ran to meet him, gave him everything that he had left. Because the Son had took a lot of it and wasted it all. But whatever he had, the finest that he still had, he still gave that to the Son to signify, this is my Son.
And the Son had just come out of the pig pen. He was filthy, dirty. He wrapped his best robe around him, no matter how dirty he was. Because it's his Son.
He also was watching for him, looking for him,
He was
Right.
waiting.
waiting. I feel like he knew one day he'd come home.
Yeah.
That's what,
I just picture every time I've ever preached it or heard about it, I picture him just standing out, looking over the horizon, looking for that boy. And then one day, a figure appeared way out there. And he got to look and he said, that's my boy.
He could tell.
He went to meet him.
He did. He didn't wait for him. And as you were saying, he accepted him exactly as he was. He was still stinking, dirty, nasty. And a lot of people wouldn't even recognize him.
you know,
Yeah.
that's at least two places in the Bible that spoke of that, too. That and about, said, raise a child in the way they should go. That child was probably raised by his father in a godly manner. When he went on his own, he went worldly, but he did come back. And that's what the word says, that he'll come back. So, you know, you have to have belief in it and faith that that'll happen. So it's a two-way street, really. It takes both. It takes the Father always with the faith that he's going to come back. And it also takes the Son to realize that, hey, I've wasted it all. I have no place to go. I'm going to die if I don't go back. And then make that decision to go back. So,
And he made that decision to go back because he knew the character of his father. He knew his father was a good father. If he had been abusive and mean and nasty and beat him, and denied him, it was not just physically cruel to him, but mentally, emotionally cruel to him, he stayed in the pig pen. He didn't stay out there because he knew there was no hope for him. And his father wouldn't do anything for him. That when the father split the inheritance and gave him his part and he left, that was it. He would know there was no going back. But because the Son knew his Father, had lived with him, he grew up with him, had been taught by him, had seen his father's character played out and exhibited over his whole lifetime. He knew what his father was like and knew he could go back. So he had the hope of, no matter how far away he got, no matter what situation he was in, that he knew in the back of his mind, I can always go home. And his hope was just because he knew his father's character, he had a hope of being accepted back because he knew his father had done this before, as far as accepting someone in and taking care of them and providing for them in some way. But he had his own desire was not the robe, not the ring, not the fatted calf, but just to be with my Father,
Yeah.
be reunited with my Father, and to serve Him. So if I can just be a servant. So by this time, his thoughts and his whole character had changed too. Not from give me, give me, give me. What he wanted. But at this point, he finally got to the point where he was willing to serve and to work and to give back. He understood the value of what his father had provided for him and what was available to him. And so he knew the quality of that. So he was willing to accept just basically kind of the crumbs that fell off the table. So I'll be a servant. I'll be a slave. But I know that I'll be taken care of and provided for if I can just get back to my Father. So when this little lady came to Jesus, she knew something about him. She had heard the stories. She had heard, maybe even seen or witnessed some of the things. But she knew where to go because she knew the power of God was on this man. She didn't fully understand who Jesus was, but she knew the power was on him. He was clothed in that glory, even though she couldn't see it with her natural eyes. She knew there was something there because what did Jesus say? When they asked him, when he said, somebody touched me, and they said, yes, of course, somebody touched you. What are you talking about? But he said there was something different about that touch. Because he said, I felt virtue go out of me. He felt some of his power, some of his character, some of who he was flow out of him. Because she was in a different kind of connection. That touch was different. It was a touch of faith and belief. And that's what it says. You know, Hebrews 7:6 says, we must, let me just read to make sure. My mind's not working as quickly this morning as it does sometimes. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Like, when we think of evidence, the first thought, at least for me, is a courtroom proceeding. Criminal proceeding where they're trying to convict someone of a crime. They get the prosecutor bringing in all their evidence against this person. Well, we got your fingerprints, we got your DNA, we got somebody saw you, we've got evidence that you were at this place and you committed this crime. And you got the defender saying, well, yeah, you may have evidence, but we can explain it this way, we can explain it this way, we can explain it this way. My client is innocent. There's evidence. So they use evidence to prove something. It says the faith is something things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So when we have the faith that proves that we believe in God and what He can do, what He's already done, and what He's doing now, and what He's going to do. It also talks about hope. And that Bible says you don't hope for something you already have. You hope for what's ahead, what you need or what you want. And we're going to get that through faith. In verse 6 it says, but without faith it is impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. So if we want to please God, we have to do it by faith. It says we can't please God without faith. It says it's impossible to please Him. Not just hard, not just difficult, but impossible to please Him. The little lady pleased God that day. I mean, He was very pleased that someone had faith to believe. Because all these people around Him, they wanted something too. They wanted to learn from Him too, or they wouldn't have been there. And a lot of them were probably just sightseers, rubber necklaces, wanted to see this spectacle, this thing. But there were some that were sincere. But this little lady took it to another level. And she not only stopped God in His tracks, she pleased Him that day. Because she had faith And she was saying to herself as she was crawling along, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. And she fought her way through the whole time. And she got there. And she finally saw the right feet. And she reached out and she touched the hem of his garment. She touched him. And we can use the same word to mean different things in the natural. We can touch someone, or we can touch someone.
Yeah.
And you can touch someone without actually physically touching them.
You know, the men that said, that was around him, says, there's men all around you, and you've been touched by everybody just about. That's kind of like the same thing with, let's just say, Ricky Nelson or any of those like that, or any of those country western singers and all this stuff, and they get in a crowd, people want to touch them just because they say, oh, I just touched him, I just want to touch him. Not for anything special, just to have it, just so you can go and brag that I touched him. And that's probably what they were doing, where she was not doing it for self-motivation like that. She was doing it for a whole different reason.
Yeah.
She wanted to be healed, and there was a difference.
Yeah, because she saw him in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't care less about being anybody famous. In fact, I'd probably go the other way. I could care. I mean, that's just, I don't understand, really. People want to, oh, there's famous person A, famous person B, and just, like you said, just doing whatever to go meet them, to touch them, be around them. I couldn't care less. That absolutely does not impress me. And this little lady wasn't impressed either that Jesus was well known.
Yeah.
She knew about him because the word about him had gotten out, but that's not what impressed her. You know, she wasn't there taking a selfie with Jesus. That's not why she was there. Or the equivalent back in the day of getting a selfie with somebody famous. She saw him in a different way. And so if I were to meet, and I did meet someone real well-known to guitar players. He was kind of famous among the guitar players. So I mentioned his name, none of y'all probably know who he was. And he was a real nice guy. That's what impressed me. I don't care how famous you are, it's what kind of a person you are.
Yeah.
Because you hear about it all the time, that all these famous people that are jerks. And that's not to knock famous people, because there's a lot of jerks that aren't famous either. What that proves is they're just real people. And a lot of them would probably be not nicer people if they weren't famous, because of all the craziness and insanity that goes on around them. Especially the more famous you get, the more insane it gets with the way people treat you. And that's what was kind of like with Jesus. You know, he knew there's a lot of people coming around him just because he was well known. And they wanted to be around him, the groupies, you know.
Yeah.
But somebody touched him and stopped him in his tracks because there was something different about that person. And we want to be that person. We want there to be something different about the way we come to God. A lot of people want God just to be like a vending machine. Put your prayer in, get your answer out. You know? Just pouring out, throwing out blessings, just be there more or less to dance at their music. Answer all their needs, all their wants. Just bless us, Lord, bless us, Lord, bless us, Lord. But there's a cost. If we want to see God's blessings, if we want to see everything that God has for us manifest in our life, there is a cost. God freely gives to us. But we have to get past the point of just focusing on ourselves or even our needs. Like this lady had a genuine need. But she saw something different about Jesus. And when she was healed, she was also changed. That changed her physically, but it also changed her spiritually.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to come to God and get all God's benefits and blessings, but they don't want to change. They want to keep doing exactly what they've been doing and just get God's benefits and blessings. Like a lot of people show up to work and just want the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to do the work. They just want to show up. You know, just working for 5 o'clock on Friday, quitting time, get that check, and then go out and do whatever they do with it. Come back the next week, get it again and again and again. And they expect that job or that company just to be there with that check every week. And they're going to do the least they can do to get it.
Kind of like people expecting the church to be here too. Well, it's just gonna be there, I just don't wanna get ready, you know. It'll be there, I can go out here and do it, and it's, it'll be there. Brother Don, you know, well, I know Brother Don will be there.
It's always there. He's going to be there. And that's what we see God.
I worked with a guy that, he told me, he said it was 2 things he looked forward to. Number 1 was quitting the time. Number 2 was payday. That's all they looked forward to, is quitting time and payday. He didn't care about the job, what he was doing, but quit time and payday, you know.
You know, blessings and benefits.
You know what's blessed me, as I preached last week, we were about blind Barnabas. The Lord knew what he was crying out for, but he asked him so that he could tell him, ask and thou shalt receive. Jesus didn't have to ask him, you know. And as far as that touch, he was, you know, if you think about it, Jesus could just reach out there and touch them. He knew, but he wanted him to ask for that special touch.
And he walked right by him to begin with. He knew he was there. And he walked by. And I'd say he knew. He was just going to see how far he could get before Bartimaeus said something.
Well, you know, when the disciples was in the boat, he was going to pass them by.
He was.
They had to cry out to him. I don't know how far he could win, you know, but he made them cry out to him.
Yeah, he was keeping an eye on, you know, out of the corner of his eye. He was watching them. So he knew. So we do, sometimes God just swoops in and takes care of it before we even say anything. Sometimes we have to do something. But just like these examples, you know, Bartimaeus and the lady, they had to cry out or do something to do that. But when they did, God heard. He already knew ahead of time. We just kind of see what we're going to do. So we're just going to let him walk by.
You humble yourself to ask for something, because the Bible does say, ask and you shall receive.
And ask, seek, knock. That doesn't mean just one time and God answers. A lot of times we have to keep knocking. That's why he said it 3 times. Ask, seek, knock. Be persistent. Another example he uses is the story of the little lady. They had a court case, and the judge was unrighteous, and never would rule in her favor. And she was right. She had the just cause on her side, and he never would rule in her favor. But she would not leave him alone. She kept asking, kept knocking on his door, knocking on his door, knocking on his door, knocking on his door. Was polite, respectful, working through the channels that you should have gone through through the system. But she kept on knock, 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 knock. He says, I am tired of hearing that knock on my door because I know who it is. I am tired of her. She needs to go away. And I am an unrighteous, dishonest judge. So take a bribe. Not ashamed to admit it. He knew the one was fine. But he died. He finally gave her what she wanted because he knew she was right.
Yeah.
And he didn't care about that
Yeah.
power. But he said, I need peace. I need to be able to sleep at night. Because she is the worm meat that I'm tired of it. So I'm going to give her what she wants, make her go away, and then I go on with my cheating ways.
Yeah.
And she got what she wanted because she didn't give up. She was persistent. So are we going to knock one time, ask one time, open the door and look one time? We've got to keep on. This lady had been a doctor for 12 years. She'd been trying for 12 years. She didn't give up in the first doctor. She kept going and going and going and going. And she finally got to the great physician because she didn't give up. She had something that she wanted and something she needed. And she didn't give up until she got it. She made that choice. And then she stopped God in his tracks. Cold. He stopped. With all the commotion around him, he stopped and ignored all that. He wasn't distracted by that. And he responded to someone that touched him. Touched him in a different way. Made a connection with him. And when you touch God, that's an awesome thing. You get blessed by it.
Yes.
You get healed, delivered, provided for, whatever. But so do we. This happened 2,000 years ago, some little village in Israel. How many of us have been to Israel? To this village? Do any of you know this lady? We don't know the lady. We've never been to Israel. We've never been to this village. But we know what happened that day. She touched God. But we can touch God through what she did. What you do and the way you touch God is also going to bless other people. Because none of this is about us. And we're in this together. We're all in this together. Just like the clothes we wear are made of cloth that's made of thread that's been weaved together in some way. There's many threads that are connected and joined together to make the very clothes that we wear. And all it takes is for us to be able to touch the robe, the clothes, the hem of the garment. Because it's like the purple robe they had when Jesus was crucified. That robe symbolized royalty. They were mocking him when they put their purple robe on him. But everybody knew what it symbolized. They knew that robe was special. And I don't know if it was actually purple. Probably was, but purple was a royal color. It's the color of royalty. So we are clothed in purple. It's like the prodigal son came back, he was clothed in a robe. God clothes us in purple robes too. Because we are his, we become royalties. It says we're a royal priesthood. We're royal, not just priests. We're priests of the king. So that makes us royal priests because we've been clothed. And we only become priests in the kingdom of God because we've touched God. And there was something different about that touch that happens between us and God that makes us different. It makes us able to become priests in the eyes of God. So we are royalty. Not because of anything that we've done or can do. It's only through what God has done for us. But we become, in his eyes, princes and princesses. Because we're part of the kingdom. It's called a kingdom. Because he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We become part of that. We are royalty in the Spirit. And it makes us special. You think of a worldly prince or princess, and a lot of them are spoiled brats. I mean, they are just self-centered, self-righteous, spoiled brats. But when we understand who we are in God, even though we're princes and princesses, part of the royalty, it doesn't cause pride. It causes humility. Because that opens our eyes to understand who God is and what he's done for us, who we are in him. And we know that we ain't nothing aside from him. So you wear the crown, but you still need to carry your mop bucket with you. Because Jesus said to serve. So we may be royal, but the example of the king was to serve and to bless and to give, to love and to minister. Because there's something about the touch that happens between God and us. We want to have a different touch. And when we touch someone else, we want them to feel that touch, the touch of God, and not just the touch from us. There's a connection that we make between us and God and in one another because we are joined together in him. Because there's something different about the touch of God that happens in us. And when God stops in his tracks, something's about to happen. So we want to do whatever it takes to make God stop in his tracks.
Yes.
We want to touch him in that way. And when we do, there's no limit to what God can do. So when we get focused on him, that's when we see his glory manifest.